The chopstick. This is a no invert needed pull trick. It does require some hamstring flexibility and some glute strength on the opposing leg. Okay, so you don't necessarily have to have a vertical split per se. You can play your angles on this one. It works on static, it works on spin. Okay, either one. I will say if you're doing it on static, you have to kind of anticipate what direction this tends to rotate a little bit so you can make sure you hit your angles just right. Okay, so for this one, we're going to be getting into it from a pull sit. It also can be gotten into from other variations of ways. I think probably one of my favorites is from a meat hook. You can also go from a cradle. We're going to go from a pull sit. Okay, so with this one, I would say before we start, don't overgrip your pull. Okay, so there is a moment here. One of the crucial things I find that keeps people from hitting their chopstick is they don't drop their head enough. And part of the reason they don't drop their head enough is they don't slide their top hand enough. Okay, so initially getting into it, we're going to have our hand high enough to kind of keep us in position. But as you drop down into it and you're trying to lift that second leg, it really helps if you slide that hand a little bit. And if your pull is too grippy, your hands are too grippy, it's going to be a little bit more of a struggle. Okay, so we're going to take it up to a pull sit. Whichever hand is high, that's going to be the leg that is coming forward. That's going to be the leg that's going to require hamstring flexibility. Okay, so if you have to plan accordingly where you're like, ooh, stronger grip, better hamstring, meh. Okay, so if you need to plot on this, I mean, you're going to work it on both sides, but you might find one side works a little bit better. So you have to plan ahead. Whichever hand ends up high, that's going to end up being the front leg in your front split or your vertical split. Okay, so I'm going to take it to a pull sit. Now, another thing I find really helps to get the grip on this is instead of just leaning to the side, which I find then ends up getting my belly, I find it works better for me to actually get, so it's a little bit more inner thigh and more to my side, which means I think of almost wrapping myself around the pole as if I was going to do like a ballerina. Okay, think about like if we were going to do a ballerina, we kind of come around. No, I'm not going that far, but versus if I just lean to the side, I end up with more of a contact point here. And I find for me, I have a little bit harder time finding the grip, a little bit harder time hitting the line. But versus if I think of kind of coming around and forward a little bit, so it kind of ends up a little bit here in that smushy spot between the rib and the hip, more similar to like where you would feel it in a leg hang-ish. It's not exactly the same, but similar. I find it's a better grip for me and makes it also a little bit easier to find that tipping point to get into it. Okay, so we're going to start from that pull sit. And as I said at the beginning, if you're doing this on static pull, which I am at the moment, you have to anticipate the direction that this move is going to rotate if you want to hit your angle. Okay, whichever hand is high, okay, if I'm grabbing this leg, I'm going to tend to rotate backwards towards my back. Okay, likewise, if I switch sides, you're going to tend to rotate this way, which means if I want my angle to hit here, I need to start about here. It's going to vary a little bit for everyone, anticipating I'm going to rotate a little bit. Okay, so just something to keep in mind. Okay, so pull sit. I'm going to crisscross my legs, wrap my torso around, lower my top hand so my head is almost parallel, if not all the way parallel. My hand is going to grab thumb facing towards my toes. Okay, you can grab the top way if you prefer that, but I find for me, I prefer the thumb facing towards my toes. I'm going to pull that leg towards my face. You may or may not need to slide that top hand. The bottom leg now, I'm going to go toe to my butt and then extend that leg. Rewrap. Okay, so that leg that you extend, yes, it's a flexibility thing. More so, it's a strength thing. So I'm extending using my butt, but there's also a little bit of like an adduction. So it's not just straight back, it's like straight back and like this is the angle of that back leg. And I find, especially as I'm warming up the move or I haven't done it in a while, it's easier to hit that angle if you start with your leg bent versus straight. Okay, and this is true with a lot of things. Same with vertical splits to the front. For most people, if they're bringing this leg up, they get better compression if they bend their leg and then straighten than if they try to bring it up straight the whole way. Same thing to the back is if we bend, really think heel to your butt and then extend, you're usually going to get a much better extension than if you try to just raise your leg straight. Okay, so I would encourage you in the beginning, Work with that back leg, releasing with it bent. And here's my little analogy that I think of on that. Use this in my contortion training with my students as well. That bottom leg, when you go to take it back, think you're wearing a high heel, pole heel. You're going to spike your butthole, hook your thong, push your thong away. Okay, so that's what you want to think of. Okay, if you pull down, you're going to pull your thong down. We're trying to pull our thong away. Okay, so let's go and do that again. Pulse it, wrap the torso around. Head is roughly parallel. Remember, majority of the time when people don't hit this, it's because they're not dropping their head low enough. Slide that bottom hand a little bit. Grab the front leg. I prefer my thumb pointing towards my toes. You can grab the other way if you prefer. I find it's easier to hold with less strength needed with my thumb towards my foot. Okay, and you can wrap in a C grip. You can go in a cup grip. I prefer the C grip wrap. Once again, personal preference. The back leg, when you feel like you've kind of got the pull here, that back leg comes off. Remember, think of spike your butthole, hook your thong, push your thong away. Okay? So, a little recap with all those things in mind. Take it to your pole sit. Wrap your torso around. Drop your head down. Grab that leg, pull it towards your head as you drop your head down. Maybe slide that top hand a little bit. Heel to your butthole. Extend, push the thong away, and then rehook. Boop. So that is your chopstick, okay? If you're doing all those things and you're like, my chopstick doesn't look quite the line I want, a couple of things. A, hamstring flexibility. Stretch out your hammies, okay? B, work on those glute extensions, okay? That can be exercise such as hands and knees, heel to your butt, extending up, making sure that you're not arching into your low back, okay? So there's lots of glute extension exercises. I would highly encourage you to work on your active flexibility if you don't already do so. But there is definitely, it is a faux split to some degree. It doesn't have to be, but that split, it's not as much hamstring flexibility that holds people back as glute strength, okay? So tips to remember from your pulse set, wrap it around so you feel it more here versus here. Drop your head, grab your leg, pull it towards your face, bend the bottom leg, hook your thong, push your thong away. And that is your chopstick. Try it on static, try it on spin, put it together with some of your fave moves, have some fun with it. Let me know how it goes.